Jimmy Dore, one of my favorite YouTubers. Go check out his show. It's Jimmy Dore. JimmyDore.com is his website, JIMMYDORE, and you can go check out his podcast anywhere on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Anchor, wherever you want to listen to it. But he went on The Hills Rising with Crystal and Sagar, but this time with just Crystal Ball, and he advocated for a message which is just set it up in this context. Democrats lost seats in the House. They lost seats in the House because those that didn't support Medicare for all, those centrist Democratic hacks, guess what? They lost their seats. So now the Democrats' majority has shortened to about what, 4 or 5 seats? So I think 7 at the most. Hell no, 5 at the most. And so Jimmy Dore. Now you hear me advocate for Medicare for all on this show all the time. I've done videos on Medicare for all. I've done videos on how many people support Medicare for all. 72% of Americans support Medicare for all. 88% of Democrats support Medicare for all. 51% of Republicans. 67% of Independents. So, I mean, everybody supports Medicare for all, just about. Yet the Democrats and the Republicans, but mainly the Democrats who own the House, don't go and use their power. So what is Jimmy advocating for? So Jimmy Dore is advocating for the progressives in Congress to use their leverage that they actually have. They might not have a lot of power, but to use the leverage that they have right now and say to Nancy Pelosi, we're going to withhold our votes to make you Speaker of the House, because they have to do that every time Congress begins, unless you bring Medicare for all to the floor of the House for a vote. Now, I'm not going to speak for Jimmy. I want Jimmy to speak for himself. So let's go ahead and hear what Jimmy has to say.
I'm super excited to get this message out. So here's the message, if I could just tell people. So progressives are always told that they don't know how to use power. They don't know how to grab power. Well, they don't have power, right? But the progressives who are elected in Congress right now, I mean the real progressives, not the 100 people in the Progressive Caucus. I'm talking about the Squad, Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, Ro Khanna, people like that, Ayanna Pressley, people who are actually have progressive policies. Now they have leverage. What's their leverage, Jimmy? Well, Nancy Pelosi needs their vote for Speaker, right? Because the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi performed so poorly that they lost seats in the House under Donald Trump. So now the margin is really small, right? So just a handful of progressives could say, Nancy Pelosi, we're withholding our vote from you for Speaker unless you bring up Medicare for all for vote on the floor. That's our deal. Now it's up to Nancy Pelosi. Do you want to risk your speakership, or do you want to make sure we have a vote on a basic human right? This is very doable. Everybody who I've said, even my detractors, are saying this is a great idea. So this is a good idea. This could actually work. We all are upset that progressives never flex their muscle, never use their power. You know, the worst abuse of power, Crystal, is not using the power you have to fight for people. So right now, they have the power. They could do this. This is the only time in the next 2 years that the progressives are going to have any leverage whatsoever. And I'm begging them to use it right now to make Nancy Pelosi bring a vote for Medicare for all. It is time to get people on the record. Some people say, well, it wouldn't pass. Well, then the American people who are overwhelmingly for Medicare for all need to know exactly who's against it, because people who are running on Medicare for all get elected. We need to have a marker right now, and we're in the middle of a deadly pandemic. This is politics 101. You know who knows how to use their leverage? The Freedom Caucus knows how to use their leverage. Right-wingers. In fact, the last time Nancy Pelosi was up for the Speaker election, the conservative Democrats extracted concessions from her. She actually had to move to the right for them.
That's right.
So all I'm asking is for the progressives to do the exact same thing that any political body would do. They would make sure they got something for their support from Nancy Pelosi. And it's really easy. A vote for Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic, I think it's an easy thing to do.
So there you go. I mean, easy. Easy. Hey, Jamal Bowman, Mondaire Jones, Cori Bush, AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, all of you, Marie Newman, go use your power in the House and say to Nancy Pelosi, would you rather risk not becoming Speaker one more time, or would you rather bring Medicare for all for a floor vote so that we can get people on the record? Because I don't know if you know this, Speaker Pelosi, we're in the middle of a goddamn pandemic. 300,000 people have died. 40 million people have lost their jobs, and now they're going to lose their health care because our system ties health care to employment. So use your power, progressives. Use your power and, force Medicare for all for a vote. Or we're going to withhold our vote for Speaker of the House. And, I think he makes a couple great points there. Number one, Jason, Jimmy, you guys are dumb. What if we lose that vote, huh? What if we lose? Okay. Well, there's 118 co-sponsors on Medicare for All in the House. But if you've noticed with Kamala Harris, she was the first person in the Senate to sign on. Not Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris. And what happened? When the media gave her pressure, she backed away. Elizabeth Warren is a co-sponsor in the Senate. She backed away. And so we need a vote. And hey, if we lose, it's even better because now we have a marker. Now we know who voted against Medicare for all. Who voted against giving you health insurance during the middle of a deadly pandemic when 300,000 people have died, when 40 million are unemployed and don't have health care. Who voted for to not give you health care? Who did it? Who? We'd be able to measure that. So there you go. He says it. Well, hey, look, we'd be able to say, okay, who do we need a primary? Who do we need to knock out of Congress because they're voting against the American people? And he says it. If you're not using your power, the biggest thing, the biggest problem is when you have power and you don't use it. Use your freaking power. That's what you're there for. We didn't elect you into the House or give you our money for you to make excuses to then not support Medicare for all and not force the establishment which you ran against to vote for Medicare for all. And if they don't, like I just said, guess what? Now we know who to primary. Now we know who's your enemy. Now we know who wants to let you die and go bankrupt and be uninsured than to actually give you proper health care. Actual health care. Not this measly crap we have in the country right now. So I like what he says there. I really do like what he says. So I also think he's right on a couple things. First, Nancy Pelosi needs their votes in any way. Like I said in the beginning of the video, why does she need their votes, Jason? Why? Because if she loses even 4 of them, she's fucked. She cannot lose them. If she loses 15 of them, she's royally screwed. A Republican could become Speaker of the House, and she does not want that. Not at all. So guess what? This is the perfect time for them to use their power. They need to use their power. They absolutely need to use their power. They do. Because if they don't, then what the hell are they there for? Right? Now, another thing he said. You know who does know how to use their power is the right-wingers and the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus, when Trump was trying to get rid of healthcare, thought the bill didn't go far enough to get rid of healthcare in this country. So what did they do? They called the president's bluff and said, if you don't do what we want, we're going to effing vote against this. We're not going to vote for it. And we're going to tell Speaker Paul Ryan, it's 2017, that we're not going to vote for it. And what happened? The president was like, fuck you guys, you're going to vote for this. And what did Mark Meadows and the rest of them say? Hell no. We're not going to vote for it. And what happened? Paul Ryan had to pull the vote because the people to his right were fighting him and saying, we're not going to vote. Go ahead, do it. Put it for a vote. We're not going to vote. That's how they do it. And he's right. The conservative Democrats, the ones that agree with Republicans more than Democrats, they got concessions out of Nancy Pelosi. They used their power. They said, we will vote for Republicans if you don't do these few things. That's what Democrats have to do. That's exactly what Democrats have to do. Because if they don't do that, then we're screwed. If they don't do that, good luck. It's not going to go well for any of us. Any of us whatsoever. So they need to learn how to use their power. And if they don't, well, then guess what? We can vote them out. That's all we need to do is vote them out. All we need to do. Now, he also went on, and so I do want to show you this part because this part gets even better here.
Well, what I've tried to explain to progressives is that the Democratic leadership, Nancy Pelosi, they hate progressives more than Republicans. So I think that's the thing they don't realize. Like I've tried to explain on my show, I make the point over and over that the first job of the Democratic Party is to crush the politician who's representing the workers. And then and only then can they move on to trying to go against Republicans. Their first order of business was to crush Bernie Sanders. And then they could go on to trying to defeat Donald Trump. That's the most important thing. So, yes, they don't realize that their obstacle right now is a conservative right winger who's a puppet of Wall Street and the military-industrial complex named Nancy Pelosi. And if they're not willing to stand up to Nancy Pelosi right now to get Medicare for all for people in the middle of a deadly pandemic, then what is the point of voting for them? There is no point. I'm saying they can prove me wrong and do this. This is easily done. This is what else are you going to do? Because in 2 years, they're going to be wiped out in the House. You know that, right? So in 2 years, the Democrats lose their majority. They lose their speakership. And the only time that the progressives in Congress are going to have any power is right now at this moment to withhold their vote from Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi's speakership is not more important than a basic human right. So I heard people say, well, they might be committing career suicide if they do that. What is really? You know what's career suicide? Not fighting for Medicare for all in the middle of a deadly pandemic. Fighting for people's health care is how you get reelected. Not fighting for it is how Joe Crowley lost. That's how you get elected. The people, Nancy Pelosi doesn't hire and fire Congress people. It's the people in your district. And if they see you fighting against the power for them, for health care in the middle of a deadly pandemic, you're going to get reelected.
Yeah.
I agree with him on all of that. Listen, Democrats in Congress, the establishment, what is their main goal? What is their main objective? Screw over the left and any politician and any other person who is for the working class, who's willing to stand up to power and stand up to the corporate donors and the corporate elite and the establishment and say, I don't care what you want. I don't care what you think. Guess who voted me in here? The people. That's who I stand up for. I don't care what Wall Street wants. I don't care what the war industry wants. I don't care what the health insurance industry or the prison industrial complex or the big pharma industry, the drug industry. I don't care whatever the hell they want. I care what the people want. Their job, the establishment's job, is to destroy every last one of them. Every single one. And then they can get to beating the Republicans. And then they can get to beating Donald Trump. It's why in 2016, what did they do? They rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders. And if you don't believe me, WikiLeaks unleashed a crapload of information. And what did they release? Oh, how do we stab Bernie Sanders in the back? How do we change the vote counts? How do we purge votes? Come on, right? Brooklyn, New York, they got sued for that. They were found guilty of doing that in the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. They crushed the man who was about the working class and not Wall Street and calling their butts out on it. And then they said we could beat Donald Trump. And then they put up a corporatist Wall Street establishment ghoul, war criminal, and party hack who pulled them out of debt to lose the election against the game show host, a clown. They lost against a clown. And then what did they do? Every single time, they went against progressives who were looking to unseat incumbents who are people that are already in Congress and running again because they weren't advocating for single-payer healthcare or free college or living wage or anything like that. So there you go. Now he also says they say, oh, it's going to become politically suicide. No, what's politically suicide is you not standing up in the middle of a deadly pandemic saying, I'm going to give you health care and I'm going to make sure you don't die and I'm going to make sure you don't end up with a ginormous, awfully huge hospital bill because you got the coronavirus. I'm going to make sure of that. No, what's politically suicide is you not standing up. You not standing up and saying, I want to give you health care. That's what's politically suicide. The people who lost House seats lost the election. They lost because they didn't support Medicare for all. That's why Joe Crowley lost. That's why AOC is in Congress, because she was complaining about this exact establishment. She was complaining about them. Well, they don't use their power like they're supposed to. They're not standing up for the American people. They're not doing, the job for the people. By the way, Democrats, okay, as Jimmy said, Nancy Pelosi doesn't hire you. She doesn't fire you. The people elect you. That's why you're raising money from us, regular people, because we elect you. We pay for your campaign to function, not Nancy Pelosi, not Wall Street. That's why you're there. Us. We got you there. So why don't you pull your freaking pants up, use your balls, and go and stand up to Pelosi and say, we're going to withhold our vote for you as speaker unless you give us Medicare for all. If you don't give us Medicare for all, you're going to lose your speakership because you can't afford to lose us right now. That's the case. That's the case. So, there you go. I think this is a great idea. We need to force Nancy Pelosi to put Medicare for all for a vote. If we don't force Medicare for all for a vote, this is the only time the progressives have power. Because over the next 2 years, they're not going to have any power. They're not going to have any leverage over the establishment Democrats. This right now is the time. Martin Luther King Jr. said, anytime now is the time to do it. Anytime is the time to do what's right. Anytime is the time to do what's right. You think that in 1959, when black people were being racially segregated and lynched and denied the right to vote and eat at a lunch counter and ride the freaking bus, if you think in 1959 these arguments would fly? No. You were laughed out of the room and often murdered for trying to fight for civil rights. But they didn't say, nah, maybe later. They didn't go, well, we don't have enough people supporting civil rights. They still did it. They still did the freedom rights. They still marched. They still protested. They still got beat with billy clubs and tasers and attack dogs and hoses and sheriffs. They still did it. So progressives need to use their leverage, and they need to use it now, right now. Demand that vote. Call your Congress people. Do it. We need Medicare for all in this country. And if we lose that vote, that means we know exactly who should and shouldn't be in Congress. Oh, you voted for Medicare for all? You get to stay in Congress. You voted against Medicare for all? You voted against me staying alive and having health care for my kids, my wife, and my family? And me? Okay, fine. You get to leave Congress. We don't need you here. Get your asses out. That's what we need to do. And I think Jimmy Dore is definitely right here.